Alright, this is going to be navigating with tracks, tips, and tricks. And this is based on a class we've been offering since 2016 in the Touratech USA showroom and at the Touratech rallies. So we're going to break this into a video which has a few parts, kind of bring it a little bit easier to digest segments, and then at the end we're going to have some GPS unit specific things that we'll cover so you don't have to watch 4 different GPS units when you only own one of them. And with this, we're going to start with what tracks are. We're going to kind of go through a little bit of terminology, how to get download a track from the backcountry discovery routes, or if you get an email from Touratech, you're going to one of the rallies, how to get it from your computer into your GPS unit, and then how to get it to show on your GPS unit so you can successfully navigate with it. And with that, we're going to really focus on kind of the current and a couple of the older Garmin units, the Garmin Zumo 660 and 665, the Garmin Zumo 590 and 595, the Zumo 350, 395 and 396, as well as the BMW Nav 4, Nav 5, and Nav 6 units, which are all based on various generations of Zumos we just mentioned, as well as the Garmin Montana 600 series. That would include the BMW Motorrad Adventure unit, which is just a repackaged Garmin Montana. And we're going to touch base a little bit on the Garmin GPSMap 60 series units. So they're up, it was a 60, the 62, the 64, now the 66. And a lot of the other outdoor units, if they're touchscreen, they're probably going to follow the Garmin Montana format. The older push-button style units with smaller screens, those are probably going to follow the Garmin GPSMap 60 series format. Some things might be slightly different, but Garmin doesn't have too many different platforms. They package you differently for different applications, but those are going to be there. If you're using another unit that's not a Garmin unit, be it a Touratech or a TomTom, and even some of the cell phone apps, if they can handle tracks, a lot of the things we're going to discuss, especially in setting up your unit, your menus might be different, but the functions and the topics we're talking about do apply. So there might be some differences, but the core principles are going to be universal. So you can get a lot from this class, even if you're not using a Garmin, but we're really focusing on the Garmins because in North America, Garmin just has the biggest footprint in the automotive, motorcycle, and recreational space. So that's what all of us here at Touratech USA run. We use Montanas. We've kind of run all of them. Most of us, lean towards the Montana for various reasons, but we're really familiar with any of them. So if you watch this and you have questions later, definitely give us a call. We'll get you pointed in the right direction, or get you to talking to the right guy that's familiar with the unit you're using. And before we go too deep, I always like to start any class with introducing myself. My name is Archambault. I've been with Touratech since 2012. I am the showroom manager at Touratech as well as East Coast Rally Coordinator. So I spend a lot of time, besides selling stuff and doing all the things you expect somebody working at Touratech to do, I do spend a lot of time riding both for Touratech and then, for myself. I still am a huge enthusiast and love going out and doing the stuff. And then setting up the events, both the East Coast Rally, and I normally help out a lot on the West Coast Rally doing all the pre-running, and for years I led rides. I do get to use the GPS in a lot of capacities, so I really think I'm a bit of an expert there. At least very, very familiar. Expert is a big phrase, but I'm very comfortable using these units, and I've used them in a lot of different aspects. And where if you're creating a ride or just doing something fun for yourself, or you're setting something up for hundreds of people, things that you'll do might be different, but the fundamentals will be the same. And well, I started with Touratech in 2012, and that's when really my GPS use I started using it a lot and really grew there. I am rooted in using paper maps. I was in the United States Marine Corps, and I did the land nav where you walk around the woods with a compass and a map, and I did pretty well with that. I understand map reading and that type of backcountry navigation. And I've also done, timekeeping enduros where you have a roll chart, and you're following. You got to keep a certain pace and hit things at certain times. And if you're too early, you get in trouble. If you're too late, you get penalized as well. I still do some of those events every year. I do some European style time regularity rallies where it's the same sort of thing, but on public roads, and there's generally a a rolling rule. If you get a speeding ticket, you're automatically disqualified. So if you make navigation errors, you can try to make it up by speeding, but you're probably going to get zapped and get disqualified anyway. So I enjoy a lot of the older types of navigation. I enjoy doing that reckoneering and that type of stuff. But when it comes down to it these days, the GPSs and navigating with tracks is a really fun way of navigating. It's a lot easier, and if it's not in a competition format, like with a roadbook rally, you're doing math in your head. You're figuring average speeds and time and distance, and you're looking out for turns, and you're always kind of glued to your odometer. And navigating with a track, especially for something like a backcountry discovery route, it's a lot more fun because you're just following a path. You don't have to worry about, does this road go somewhere? You have something that's known good, and you're just out there exploring and having fun. Somebody else did the legwork, and doing the legwork's fun too. But it's great to go out there and just go chase a track that either you've ridden before or somebody told you, hey, this is awesome, and you're going and doing it, or something like the backcountry route where you have a great nonprofit that's out there producing these rides and keeping these riding areas open for you. So that's just a little bit about me. I always like to start any GPS-based class too, talking about paper maps because it's gone away a lot. But there was years ago, especially the old timer that would always stand up, and I use paper maps and a compass. And if my compass stops working, that means the center of the core of the Earth isn't spinning anymore, and we got bigger problems. And I still carry a compass with me, and I still carry paper maps, and it's really not uncommon, especially if I'm out there trying to create a ride, be it helping with the backcountry discovery route folks, or for one of the Touratech rallies, and I'm out there and I am running my GPS. I can see where I am, but there's no replacing that 3-foot piece of paper that is going to show you that really big picture. So I bounce between them, and especially when I'm finishing up and polishing up a rally, I normally have multiple paper maps on my desk because they all show you something different, be it a motorcycle focus map or just a USGS map or maybe a regional map that's just for recreational use, and you can get a lot of information from all those. And then your map reading skills, if you're just getting into it and you haven't really used paper maps and you start running topographic maps on your GPS and you start learning to read the contour lines and the symbols, and you grab a paper map and you're going to find a lot of it's the same. So they do go hand in hand. If I'm out there pre-running for an event, I have the paper maps, I'm running the GPS, I probably have a satellite transponder for in case of emergencies on me, and I do have my little Write in the Rain notebook that a lot of times it's just quicker to write down a quick note. I'll drop a waypoint and say, hey, 2 miles after waypoint 005, really ruddy and muddy. Probably don't run beginner riders down it, or recheck before the event just in case everything dries up. So all this technology works together. You use all the tools you can get for the job, and a GPS is a great tool, and it's made backcountry navigation a lot easier in the recent years. But don't leave the paper maps at home. They still have a place, and they still give you a big picture that's hard to replicate on a 4 or 5-inch GPS screen. So that's just my piece on that. I just like to clear that up, that a lot of times people have this mentality, even if they maybe have no experience, but they hear people on both sides arguing one's better than the other, and they both have their strengths and weaknesses, and together they're better than either of them alone. So there's that. We're going to go into terms and vocabulary. When it comes to GPS and backcountry navigation, there's a lot of terms, especially when you get on the electronic side with the GPSs, that sound very similar, that are completely different things. So I always like to start with getting everyone on the same sheet of music on when I say track or route or waypoint, what I mean, and then you're not trying to make your GPS do a thing that it can't do because you're using the wrong term. And not that I'm always right, but in this class, I'm going to make sure I'm using the correct terms. So we're just going to dive in. There's only a couple of them, and it's going to clear up a lot of clarification. It's going to get you kind of in the right mindset as well for when you're dealing with the GPS and what it can do and what it actually is. First term is going to be waypoint, and we got 3 images here. The top center one, that one's going to be a screenshot off of Garmin Montana. You have a little campsite that's marked 006. That was just the waypoint number was given. The red line is a track that's been shown on the map. You have a contour line up in the right-hand corner, and then down below you have a little bit of a blue track that is just a active track that happened to be on the GPS unit that I grabbed this screenshot from. And the big thing with a waypoint, the bottom two pictures are going to be from Garmin Basecamp, which is going to be your computer side software. When you're dealing with Garmin GPS units, you have the GPS itself, and then you have your computer interface that lets you manage and build a lot of stuff. And that's going to show you more details. And that bottom right hand one, it says position, and it gives you a coordinate. It's north 47 degrees, 19.132 minutes, west 118 degrees by 40.692 minutes. And the big thing that I like to bring up on this, that position is fixed on the globe. If you think of the globe as just a white ball, you have your latitude and longitude points, some are up, down, some are left, right. Those positions don't care about what map you're using. It is just a position on that sphere that is the Earth. And you obviously want to have the best map, the most detailed map for your area, but those positions don't care about the map. They're going to, in this case of this waypoint, regardless of what map you have, that waypoint's going to be shown on top of it. So it's not an address that, well, if my map doesn't show the street, it's not going to show. It is showing the point on the Earth, and it doesn't care about the maps. You could have no maps, it's always going to be shown, as long as it's not hidden. But by default, it's going to be shown. And you can see, too, in the Garmin Basecamp views there down on the bottom, you can add notes and other information that you'd like, or you can change the symbol. If it was a gas station, you can put a gas pump or something like that. But big takeaway, a waypoint is just a fixed position on the globe. And waypoints have a lot of use besides marking a campsite. I use them a lot if I'm going to go ride dirt bikes and I'm running the GPS on the bike. When I park my truck and unload the bike, I mark a waypoint there. And then I will have that fixed point that I can look at on the GPS, and depending on my maps, I can navigate back to either by saying, just take me there, or I can kind of zoom out and see where I am and see that, and then just kind of follow trails until I find my way there. And the same thing if you're out there in the woods and you have a mishap, either you break your bike, you break yourself, or your buddy breaks himself or their bike, and you have to leave either a bike in the woods or leave a person in the woods, you can mark a waypoint that maybe you don't have a satellite transponder, but you're going to go get cell coverage and you're going to get first responders, and you can tell them, hey, my buddy has a broken leg, he can't walk, he seems okay, he's not in shock, he's at this location. You can read off that location, and any first responder is going to know what to do with that information. That format is universal. It doesn't matter what GPS they have or anything like that. That format is universal. You could talk to somebody, in another country. This is universal. So it's really great that way, where you can mark locations. I've even done it. Riding around the woods, setting up a rally, and I find this great camp spot. It's just hidden out in the middle of nowhere. I'm 7 ways from nowhere, and I find it and I can mark the waypoint and go, next weekend I'm going to drive out here. I know it was hard to get out here, but I think I can find a way out and ride back out there the next weekend, camp out for the weekend, and just have solitude for a couple of days. So waypoints are a great way of marking a location that you're going to want to use again, be it finding your truck, finding your camp, finding your buddy that's broken that you're getting help for. It's really, a great tool. So track is going to be the next one, and this is where we're going to get into that fuzzier terminology a little bit. And a track, up top we have a picture, another again screenshot from Garmin Montana, and the red line is a track. This is somewhere in central Pennsylvania where we do the East Coast Rally. I'm sure that was one of the rides we did one of the years, and there's waypoints and stuff laid over it. But that red line is a track. And down below is an example, and it's not of that track, so don't geek out and say those position points aren't in Pennsylvania. They're not. They're in Washington. But it was just a good example I had on hand. And it really highlights what a track is. And a track is a series of positions that are connected by a line. And again, the positions are sort of like a waypoint where, you see the latitude and longitude coordinates, but they are not related to the map. They're related to the world. They're related to that sphere that we're on. So you can change your maps. And that's the reason why tracks are used when you're trying to share, especially backcountry navigation. That's why the backcountry discovery routes use them. That's why we use them for the Touratech rallies. Almost any sort of backcountry navigation, you're going to be using tracks. Because sometimes there's not a road there or anything that the GPS, if it's looking at a map, would say, hey, this is a path you should go down. It's just a path that either you intend to go or somebody went before and then you intend to go, or you have confidence is there and you mapped it out using satellite imagery or other maps on the computer. So the thing with the track, and the tough part is there's a very small part of the world that, or of even the people that navigate, that use it. It's used for backcountry travel, be it overlanding or backpacking, you know, all that type of stuff, and especially for off-road motorcycle use. I think maritime and some aviation, they still use it because if you're in a boat or an airplane, you're not using roads either, and it's a way to make paths that you can repeat and navigate with. And that's why when you call Garmin, you sometimes can have a hard time even calling a lot of the companies that make GPSs, because so few people use this that they're tech support people. They're used to, well, my car GPS doesn't know where the mall is, and why doesn't know where the mall is, and it's for whatever reason. This is kind of a specialized navigation, and it's great for what it is because it doesn't care about your maps. And I could give it to you, and you could have maps that are 5 years old, or you could just have a different version of the map. It doesn't matter. It's going to show you that same line. We've just taken a Sharpie and drawn it on the map, hitting all these position points on the globe. So that's why we use backcountry discovery routes, or use these for backcountry discovery routes and for Touratech rallies, because everyone's going to be running a little bit different map set. Some of them might be older. You might be running a topo map or maybe a third-party map or something, and you're going to see the same thing. You're going to follow the same line. And it's not going to give you any prompts. You're just overlaying this track on top of your map that you intend to follow, and as long as you stay on that line, it's going to go where that line's supposed to go, where it was intended to go. And then get a little bit more into tracks. A neat thing that the GPS units do is you have your current track, and that's going to be what we're all used to seeing on the screen. You kind of get a pale blue line behind you, and maybe if you cross over it, you'll see it again, but that's where you've been. And a lot of times we call it a breadcrumb trail. It's where you've been, and that's going to be your current track. And this is a screen grab again off of Garmin Montana. And when your current track is full, whether you have it set to reset every night at midnight, or after a certain number of points, or after a certain file size, it's going to become an archive track. On some of the Garmin Zumo units, instead of having current track and archive track, you're going to have current track, and there's going to be a bunch of saved ones. And the format's going to be similar to the ones below the archive track here, where it's a date and a time. In this case, those are saved tracks on the case of this Garmin Montana, and those were just ridden before and then dragged back into the unit as a save track. Normally there'd be a name. You'd name it something that makes sense, like that bottom one, 02 Stone Valley Loop, which was one of the Touratech Rally East rides a couple years ago, that it was, it was given a name that would make sense. But your GPS, unless you disable the feature and turn it off, it's always going to be recording where you go. So when you plug it in your computer, if you go and you just wander off and you find this really rad road, you can go back and look at it in Garmin Basecamp and go, I'm going to save that section because, I think I want to go back there sometime and ride that again. Or I'm going to show my buddy because this was, I was out in the mountains and all of a sudden the dirt road turned to this beautiful 5 miles of paved, just go-kart track in the middle of the woods. And you'd be surprised how many times that happens too. And it's really great when it happens, and it's really great when you go, you know what, I'm going back there next week and I'm just going to rip that for 20 minutes. So that's the rest of tracks. It's also something that's being saved behind you. That'd be your current track or an archive track, and then if you bring them in, it's going to be the saved ones because the GPS unit says, hey, you saved this and now you brought it in, not we're recording it or we're archiving it on the unit itself. So that's the difference between those. The screen will vary a little bit on some of the Zumos, but it's the same effect. Route and trip, and then even sometimes adventure. Garmin likes to, especially on the Zumo units, update their terminology. They're trying to keep it sounding a lot like a smartphone, and a lot of it's trying to make it more comfortable for people, where people do complain if you're using 20-year-old terms. Those of us have been using the GPS units for the Garmin units for 20 years kind of hate that they changed. The same thing has a new name and it's still the same thing, but it's 6 of one, half dozen the other, I guess. So a route or a trip or any of those things that's not a track, and pretty much if the unit's trying to make it not a track, you just want to say no if you're doing backcountry navigation. The GPS is going to take a handful of points along that track and show you how smart it is by using all of your auto routing features, be it avoiding tolls or highways, or you want dirt roads or you don't want dirt roads, or you want twisty roads, and it's going to try to put as many of the things you want and a few of the things you don't want along that path. And these are great if you're just saying, hey, I'm in Seattle, I want to get to Spokane, I want to do it the fastest way possible, boom, or you're leaving Seattle and you want to hit a store somewhere along the way, and you're going to Idaho Falls, and it'll figure it out. And you really don't care about the path as long as you hit a couple of points. But if you're doing backcountry navigation, routes and trips and any of that stuff, it's not going to work well because it's going to want to snap you to roads. It's going to look at what your routing is, and generally you're going to default your routing to get you somewhere the fastest, because if you're punching in an address, that's what you want. So while these have a place, they don't have a place in backcountry navigation. That's really the focus on this, is doing backcountry discovery routes or going to the Touratech rally and riding some rad rides. So I would just avoid all this for that type of stuff. Just, it exists, and if you want to go down the hole, explore it. But if you're trying to do off-road stuff or backcountry stuff, routes and trips, and especially if you have a track that you want to ride that path, if you make it a route or a trip, it's almost guaranteed to make it something that you don't want, to the point that every year after the Touratech rally, people will come back and they want to go ride a ride. They'll go to, they'll be right outside where we hold the event. They'll say, take this, they'll convert it to a trip, and they'll ride the highway around the forest and get back to right where they started, because the GPS says, why would you go down all these dirt roads? Because you started here, you finished here, you went that way. So we'll take you that way and we'll bring you back here, and that's what happens. So if you have a track and you want to ride a track, you need to show the track and follow the track. And we'll get into a little bit more how to do that. But route and trip, the GPSs, especially the Zumos, will push you towards. But it's not applicable for backcountry travel, and just say no. So now we're going to get into one of the things that is kind of the harder part, and it's one that we get a lot of questions about, is loading tracks into a GPS. And if you have a Garmin GPS, to load the track into it, you're going to need to have Garmin Basecamp on your computer. And that is a free download from Garmin. And we have a screenshot of the homepage, or the software right here of Garmin Basecamp. And this is where you can manage your different maps. You can save and archive data, and you see on the left-hand side of the screen, on my computer, there's, folders with events that I've done, and different backcountry discovery routes, and even last week and last month, the things I've archived in there. So you can really save a lot of information. You can create tracks in here. It's a really great piece of software. A lot of people complain it's a little bit old, but the nice thing is you learn it, and it's not going to change next week or in 6 months if you haven't used it, because it's winter and you're not doing motorcycle things, you're getting ready for new trips, and you fire it up and it has an update and nothing's where you left it. I appreciate that this software has not changed much in a long time. So the first thing we're going to do, and I'm going to assume if you don't have Garmin Basecamp and you're going to try to go through this, just pause this video, go to Garmin, download Garmin Basecamp, get it unpacked, and then you can even follow right along with this. So we're going to start out with the desktop view. And I've already downloaded the California Backcountry Discovery route. It's the third from the top on the right-hand side. It's a GPX file. That's the way this type of GPS information is saved for Garmin's. It's kind of a universal format. And so I have that on my desktop. If you download it, sometimes it'll go to your downloads folder. Just know where you put it. And in some cases, some computers still will download it as a zip file. And if you're going to try to bring it into Basecamp, you need to make sure you unzip that file. And Basecamp won't tell you that you need to unzip it. It will bring in the zip file that doesn't work. And then that's frustrating. So if you download it and it's in a zip file, unzip it before you try to bring it in. And in this case, I just put it right to my desktop, so it'll be easy for this example. And then we'll go back into Basecamp here, and we're going to go to File. And before actually we even go to File, on my computer, on the right-hand toolbar in the middle of there, or the left-hand toolbar rather, in the middle, you have My Computer, and that's everything that's saved on there. And I have My Collection selected, and that's kind of the top where you can save things menu. That's going to be your broadest one. And if I was clicked in another one of those submenus and I imported something, it would go there. And you can see that when you go to File and Import Into, it says My Collection. So if you forgot to do that, you'll get that visual cue that, well, I don't think I want to put this in. I don't think I want to put the California BDR into my Washington backcountry discovery route because that wouldn't make sense. So just make sure you're at My Collection when you go to import. And a lot of times, even if I'm doing more generic stuff, I kind of like to go just to My Collection, and then I put it where I want it. And maybe I'm just not super confident with computers sometimes, so I don't mind the extra step just to know that it's not going to go into the ether and it's going to be lost. I'd rather go to my computer than drag it if I need to drag it somewhere. But a lot of times, if there's a backcountry discovery route, the Touratech Rally, you're going to want to have it its own little page or folder anyways. So from there, you're going to go down, import into My Collection. And here we've kind of scrolled down, we got into, and we found where the file was on my desktop. And I am using a Mac here. On a PC, it's very, very similar. I bounce between the two platforms, and I can't tell you the difference. So I know there are differences, but it's going to be very similar. So we select the file, and we're going to hit import. And then from there, you can see now in My Collection, I have the California backcountry discovery route. And with the BDRs, it is nice that they date the files, so you know when you downloaded it. And if they do an update, they change the date. So if you have one, and I think I have some saved that are many, many years old, you want to navigate with the most current one. But it's kind of a nice thing they've started doing where they put the date in there. And below on my computer on the left-hand side, you have where California backcountry discovery route is highlighted. Down below, you see there's a list of waypoints and things, and we'll zoom in a little bit here. And again, you'll see all that, and you can start to see that there's fuel stops, and then you can even see some of the tracks. So you can see that all of that is, everything that's in that tab on my computer in your collection there, you can see all the contents of it, the waypoints, and then the tracks as well. And then from here, you're going to want to import it into your GPS unit itself, because having it on your computer is great, but your computer doesn't have a GPS and you can't ride with your computer on your handlebars very well anyways. So actually, we'll back a sec here, and you can see that I have my Garmin plugged in. So up at the very top is my Garmin devices, and you can see I have a Garmin Montana 600 hooked up, and then that no name is the micro SD card that's in the unit itself. And when you go to import it, there's also some maps, but when you go to import it, it'll give you the option to select if you want to put it in the SD card or into the internal memory of the GPS. So we go back to importing it in there. You have to be highlighted on the California BDR, and you go to transfer, and it's going to say send California BDR December 2018 to device. And it's nice that they give you, whenever you're in these transfer modes, it's not just saying, do you want to send this file? It's giving you the file name. So you get that reminder and just make sure, yep, that's what I want to do. And I've definitely caught myself where I clicked on something else, or fat fingered it a little bit and go, no, back out and click the right thing. So you select that, and it's going to give you this thing here. It's going to ask you, okay, select which device. And if I had multiple GPSs hooked up to my computer, it would list all of them. When I go down, it gives me the two tabs, the Montana or no name. And these tracks for the backcountry discovery routes, where it's just tracks and waypoints, they're pretty small files. So you can put it in either one. If you don't have an SD card, just put it in the internal drive. It's down to personal preference. A lot of times I use the internal memory, but if you're going to do a trip and do a whole bunch of them, maybe you'd put them all in the card so you knew they were in the card. When you go to find them on the GPS unit, it looks at it all the same. It doesn't differentiate between the card and the GPS unit's internal memory. So, and below that too, select what you'd like to send. And tracks and waypoints, if you're talking Touratech Rally or backcountry discovery routes, that's all you're going to have. If you were using routes and you wanted to transfer a route, you'd want to click that, and by default that I believe is normally checked. I normally uncheck it, and I don't use routes at all for anything. I always use tracks or waypoints. So select the applicable ones. The bottom two are the custom maps and imagery. That's something they've added recently, and again, it doesn't default click. I've never needed to do that, and I just can't really speak on to if that's going to cause problems. I'd say if you download the Backcountry Discovery Rally, the Touratech Rally, or the KTM Rally, something like that, you just need to bring tracks and waypoints over, so just have those selected. And you hit send, it'll give you a little spinny wheel for a second. And then it's not a bad idea to go into the unit itself, where I put it in the unit's internal memory. And then if you click on that in my devices, you can see down below it says Montana 600, the unit number, and then you have this list of tracks, and higher up there are the waypoints, so you can verify what you put in the unit's actually there. And it's a really good practice to do. Rarely are there problems, but just out of loading hundreds of GPSs at the Touratech Rally, when people bring them and I need to load them, I normally like to check that before somebody goes to go out for a ride and then they're in a rush, or if you're gonna get on an airplane and go somewhere and you just loaded it real quick, I'd even fire up the GPS and look and make sure the tracks are there. So rarely are there problems, but it's just good practice, especially if you can't fix it in a couple of minutes, to double check. So after I import something, I normally like to just look even on the, I normally just do it here in Garmin Basecamp and check that it's there. So now you have the tracks loaded in your GPS. The next video we're going to cover how to actually dial in your unit for it, and then we'll have videos specific for all the common GPSs on how to show them on your GPS itself. So that's the first of a few videos here on navigating with tracks, tips and tricks. So we've gotten you, we get the same, we're all talking the same language with the terminology. We get the tracks from the internet into your computer, into your GPS, and then the next one we're gonna start dialing in how to display the tracks most effectively on your GPS, and then we will have the unit specific ones on actually how to show it and change color and things like that on your unit as well. So hopefully this was good. Hope you stay tuned for the rest of them. Of course, if you ever have any questions, give us a call at Touratech USA or shoot us an email. All of us play with this stuff. We all ride and go out and make tracks and follow tracks and get out there and do this stuff. So we'll see you soon.